installations that happened over the last few weeks. Hopefully they have a lot of good stories about that. All right, so announcements again, dues, $25 per family, and that covers you for the entire 2025 season, and that gets you access to the club library, all of our equipment you can borrow when you need to, and then of course it'll give you also one membership to the CSBA state level. All right. Yep, so Doug's our equipment manager. If you need to borrow equipment, you can call him.
Don't text, I got a phone call.
And you guys can arrange pickup and return of the equipment. And there you go, the contact information is right there. And if you don't have it here, if you need it later, you can talk to him or talk to me, and we'll get it to you. There's a Bees and Butterfly event on June 14th, Pine Lane Nursery. The link is here, and of course we'll be publishing all this, so you can click on the links yourself, or you can take a picture of it now if you want. And that's where they're going to host an event where you can go out and sell some honey if you wish. And the CSBA Summer Bee College is also happening in June 13th. Starting on June 14th is the next day. $40 for members, $50 for non-members in Rifle, Colorado. They move things around. They do one event on the western slope, one event on the eastern side. Sometimes they move south. They try to move it around so that everybody gets some local exposure.
This summer we have Randy Oliver and Dewey Karen as our in-person guest speakers. In person, both of them. So,
What do they do at that event?
What do they do at the Summer Bee College? Well, you talk about beekeeping on a national level. So national speakers can
break it down a little bit more. The morning is typically presentations. So in a classroom situation like this, in the afternoon we go over to a commercial beekeeper site. We do some hands-on learning things there. So there are different stations you rotate through. Often we get a tour of their honey house as well, so an experience of a commercial beekeeper's honey house.
Yeah, and if you're really lucky, they'll do a bee beard like get in there.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I don't know, it'll show up better on the better screen. Okay, we do have the garage sale coming up, and I know that Janet wanted to talk about that.
So the garage sale's coming up quick, in a week and a half. If you are still considering donating things, please contact me. I need the stuff by this weekend, so that I can inventory and price out and do all that. And you do get a tax deductible. Huh? Tax deductible. Thank you. Tax deductible receipt if you would like. We will be there from 9 to 3. We're still looking for volunteers to help us out. The more the merrier. And the sale itself runs from 10 to 2. So if you can't be there helping us out from 9 to 3, you could do 9 to noon or noon to 3, if that works for you. But anybody interested in helping us?
Where is it going to be held?
It's being held at Tagawa Nursery this year.
I'll go.
Yeah. So, okay.
I'll be there.
Tell me your name.
3 gun.
That's right. Okay, and then all the others that are on the board, so anybody who's not on the board that wants to help us out. Chris? Okay.
So what was the date again?
Sunday, the 18th.
May 18th.
So you only need for a couple hours, you need to volunteer for a couple hours.
Yeah, if you want to do 9 to noon or noon to 3.
Okay,
Okay. Do you know what shift you would do?
Oh, where do you see the most?
I don't know.
Okay, I'm early bird, however they all come early.
Okay, 9 to 12.
All right.
Perfect.
Good
Okay.
hour.
Chris, do you have a time preference?
I can get there at 9.
9 to 12 or 9 to 3?
9 to 12.
Would you like to supersize that?
Yeah, really.
Listen to the question.
And, sir, did you want to help us all day?
Sure, when do you need me the most? I could be there all day. I
Okay.
got nothing going. I'm retired, I got nothing
9
going.
to 3. 9 to 3 on the 18th.
Gets me out of the house.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, and we will see you there. Yeah.
All righty. And we also have on May 31st, our NA area event is going to be mite testing and how to inspect. And yes, those are white beads because they're covered with
Powdered sugar.
powdered sugar. Exactly. So that's starting at 9:45. In other words, everybody has to be there at 9:45. It's going to be at our club apiary, which is at the Parker Water. The address is right there, 18100 East Woodman Drive. There's a limited time to open the gate and get everybody through. So that means everybody has to be there. The gate opens once, everybody drives through, the gate closes, nobody can come in after that. So we have to be there at 9:45, and then we'll open the gate at 10. So also be certain to bring your bee suits or other PPE. Wouldn't do well to stand there next to it not having appropriate protection.
You must be a member.
Thank you. And you must be a paid member, which is not that much if you're not a paid member. Remember all the benefits you get. Okay. And the Queen Order, the CSBA Sustainability Group, Queen Order, we've taken some orders from the club. The club is going to make a single order through the CSBA. And Brian actually has some knowledge about this.
Yeah, I'm the organizer of this activity. So looking at your information up there, the only thing I have different is as of now, May 21st is the estimated delivery date. That was based on the last time I had spoken with them. Everything else looks correct. What'll happen is you'll have one representative from your club come and pick them up, and then you'll have that representative disseminate them for your club members. Now, if you have, I think your club has like 30 or 30-something ordered. If one of those members has like half of that order, that person can certainly come up and pick up their half, as opposed to waiting for that club representative to do that. As far as payment goes, we'll have the CSBA bill the club for the total. So you'll pay the club pays the club. Does that make sense, Peter?
Yep.
Any questions?
None from me.
As soon as I hear an update, I will email to the local leaders group, which you should be on that list. Is that right, Peter?
Yes.
Any updates from what I just said, I will email you as soon as I find them out. That's the current information.
Perfect.
I like this, somewhere in Denver.
Correct.
Exactly. Okay, this is the month of May. Honey flow is coming, especially after all this rain. So what do we got to do? We have to install our packages if we haven't already, which everybody should have done that already. Swarm watch, mites, we're going to have to get counts, make certain that you deal with them. And then get ready for a harvest, put in your queen excluders if you use those, and install more supers to make certain that we have enough space. So, now we're going to get into splits and swarm control. And Brian's got an excellent presentation about this, by the way. That is not Brian. I love that picture. What should I do next?
Something went wrong.
All right.
What would you do next? That was you, Peter.
Well, I think that his right answer was, quick, get a picture of this.
I had, while he's pulling that up, I was installing a swarm into a box. Shook everything BVAC, which is kind of like a bucket style BVAC, shook it out in front of little nuke box, and they decided to crawl up my foot instead of go into the box. It turned out the queen decided to find her place on my shoe. So I had my entire shoe, not my head, but my shoe, and they started going up my leg, they started going under my pant. And it was one of those situations where I could kind of guess that there was a queen there, right? Because you're thinking about the bees following the queen. So I kind of was really careful because I didn't want to accidentally step on the queen, right? I saw her, was able to pick her up, catch her in a queen cage, put her kind of in the middle between myself and the box. And then I took my leg and I very quickly and, sternly shook it off, and I didn't get stung a single time. And they kept coming back to my foot because obviously my foot still had that pheromone, right, on my shoe. But that was definitely not quite like that, but a new swarm install experience for me, for sure.
Get that man a bottle of crud cutter.
All right, without further ado, Brian, thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks.
All right. I'm Brian. I like bees. I'm going to talk about swarm prevention and making splits today. We run Flower Street Farm. That's my wife and I. We do the City Park Farmers Market on Saturdays. We do the Lafayette Farmers Market on Sundays. We sell honey. We sell beeswax products. I do a lot of education, like I'm doing right now. I was an elementary teacher for about 20 years, so being a teacher is kind of at the heart of what I do. Love the outreach that I get to do at the local markets too. Some people, some beekeepers who have chosen this as a profession hate the farmer's market route, but I love it. I love interacting with the community. I love seeing those people who haven't yet gotten bees, but one day are going to come up to you and just express that excitement that they feel. So many of us have that love for bees, right? You know exactly what I'm talking about. So that's a little bit about me. Yeah, I'm the vice president of the state association. I'm the lead of the sustainability committee as well. So if you have any questions around those lines, I can definitely help you out. Well, hopefully by now you should know, has your colony made it through winter? Yeah. Right? Congratulations. Either they have or they haven't, right? It's not always the end of the world if your bees haven't made it through the winter, right? Raise your hand if you had dead colonies this winter. Oh my gosh, what a resource that is. Holy cow, we'll talk about that in a little bit. This was my second worst year as a beekeeper. I went from about 75 colonies down to about 50. You look at those 25 colonies that I lost though, man, that is gold. And you're gonna hear about how I've used all those frames to help my colonies. I'm way beyond my 75 now from the work I've already done in the spring. Let me back up a second. When I say I run about 75 colonies, that's 50 production colonies and 25 resource colonies. When I say production colonies, those are my colonies that are producing for me. This is my job. This is my profession. So I need my bees to produce for me so I can make money. They'll produce for me by making nukes. They'll produce for me by making queens. They'll produce for me by making honey, by making beeswax, by making propolis, all that good stuff. I have 50 colonies that I want doing that. I have 25 colonies who their sole purpose is to make sure those 50 colonies are rocking and rolling. Right? So as I went from 75 down to 50, it was really easy to take those 50, because that's what I need for production colonies, plug in my production spots, and then make splits off of those 50 to then add my numbers right back up. But here's the thing though, colony coming out of winter doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna rock and roll. This colony, you can tell, has come out of winter and is just rocking and rolling in the spring. It has responded to the temperature, it has responded to the nutrition. Look at that queen's laying pattern. That's what you want a queen to look like coming out of spring. That's not what they all look like though. Your first job, and I'm sure you've done this already as a beekeeper, is distinguishing those colonies that are going to look great coming out of winter and maybe a colony that has a health problem or a colony that queen is just petering out. And it was that winter that kind of pushed her over that edge and just nothing's happening. They're not building up. You go in 1 week and there's 2 frames of brood, and you go in a week later and there's 2.5 frames of brood. And you're like, man, they're going nowhere. That's an important thing to notice in the spring. I'm not going to talk about those colonies tonight because that's a totally different conversation. I'm talking about these colonies. What do you do with these colonies? Not the sick colonies, not the colonies where the queen is petering out. This colony, though, it's going to make me some money. It's a resource for me. Okay. Swarm Essentials is a great book. This is from the Essential series from Wick Wasp Press. I know you can't read this very well, so I'm providing you with the resource. I even have to take, I'm not sure I can read it very well. This is a great flow chart on the swarming process. The top 4 factors on the top of this chart: abundant forage, crowded conditions, I can't read this, brood nest congestion, and then it's the queen's pheromones not being spread throughout the colony as much. Those 4 factors lead to that swarming potential. I'm even going to hop up on here because I don't have my pointer. Right? Colony decides it wants to swarm. They develop queen cells. The mated queen leaves. Here's what the original colony does. Here's what the swarm has done with the original queen. I want to come back and talk here a little bit in a minute or two. The virgin queens mature. The first queen to emerge kills the rivals in their cell. We'll talk about that box in a couple of minutes. That process there. Again, this is Steve Rapaski, Swarm Essentials. A great kind of flow chart on the swarming process. If you want to see that chart, that's a resource for it. But it's those 4 factors up top that are those determiners in swarming. Now, abundant forage can be replaced. That can be replaced by that eager beekeeper who's feeding way too much in the spring. So it doesn't necessarily have to be natural nutrition. That factor can be stimulated by the beekeeper itself. Crowded conditions, that's something the beekeeper can impact. The brood nest congestion, we're going to talk about that a lot, and the queen's pheromones. These are all interrelated. Giving space in the spring is such an important idea. That queen that's healthy wants to lay frames up, like that picture you saw. And if she has space to do it regularly, that's a huge factor in preventing that swarming process. If she has no place to lay, she can't give off her pheromones. Every time she's laying an egg, that's an opportunity for her to exert her pheromones. If she's not laying eggs or laying less eggs, she's exerting less pheromones. That pheromonal output is decreased. If there's more bees in that colony, they're not going to sense that that queen is there as much, and that can stimulate the swarm response. So that idea of always having space for the queen to lay is a really important idea in the spring. And I'm going to pound that idea over and over again all night long. There's lots of different ways you can make splits. There's lots, and I'm going to talk about just a couple of ways that I like. Now, those 25 dead colonies, that's where they really start to come in to help me out here. When I get to a colony and I start to see some of those conditions that make me think that colony might be ready to start thinking about swarming, I might pull out some frames and give that colony more space. Now, when I was a growing beekeeper, more space looked like a brand new frame with just foundation on it. That's really not more space for the bees. That's work for them. That's a job for them to do. That's like a whole nother room that they have to build onto their building before they can put babies or food or whatever into that. That's not immediate space. If you pull out drawn comb and put foundation in there, that can actually exacerbate the swarming impulse because you've actually taken space out of there for them. So those 25 colonies that I lost provided me an opportunity to take out frames of brood from my colonies that are building up and allow me to put frames of brood, not frames of brood, frames of comb in there, and the queen can lay immediately. So my favorite split that I like to do in the spring is to pull a beanless nuke, just to give space. I run double deep 8 frames. I'll go into my top box. I'll know it's a healthy colony because I've been taking notes in my spring inspections. I can pick up my top box, take a look in that bottom box, and I can tell really quickly there's brood in both of those boxes. I've already done any reversals that I need to. There's bees in both boxes. I'll go into my top box and pull out a whole bunch of frames of brood and food and replace them with drawn comb. What I like to do is this is my basic split in the spring. 2 broods and a food. 2 frames with brood and 1 frame with the food. Then you get 2 frames with foundation and you let them start to build those frames as they go. Really easy. Pulling out 3 frames, replacing 3 frames. I do it right there in the top box. I don't even have to go into the bottom box to inspect. What I do need to do is make sure I don't take the queen with me. So I'm inspecting these frames really carefully. If I've already found the queen in this colony, I've put her aside in a separate box so I can then pull any frame I want and know I don't have the queen. But I might vary this a little bit. Why? How and when might I vary how many frames to put in a split? What factors do I consider? What do you think? Weather. Talk about that, Pete. If I were to make a split 2 days ago, how might I change this based on the weather that we just experienced for 2 days?
Put a feeder on it,
Put a feeder on it. Okay.
it's not going anywhere.
They're not going anywhere. Oh my gosh, that's a really good point. So they're not going to be able to feed themselves naturally, even with that frame of food. It might be helpful to feed them. Maybe a pollen patty, because that frame of food might just have nectar on it. It might not have any pollen.
Now, this nuke at this time does it have a native queen or queen cell?
It could have a queen cell. It could have nothing at all. Maybe it just has eggs and larvae for them to make their own queen cell. Do you think that's a factor in how many frames you would put in that split?
I'd make it heavier with no queen cell or no native queen.
Yeah, so as you look at the temperature, if it was June and it was 80 degrees every single day and it's only going to get down in the 60s at night, you could probably make a split with 1 frame of brood and 1 frame of food. But looking at the temperature, if you were to do this 3 days ago, it might be a better idea to give them a little bit more bees. Maybe you want this to be a production colony. Maybe you want this colony to make you honey this year. I would give it a whole bunch more frames of brood than just 2. Maybe I would give it more frames of brood later, but I might even give it more frames of brood now so it builds up really, really quickly. So there are other factors that you might want to think about when thinking about how big to make this. But what about pros and cons of doing this before the swarming impulse or in response to the swarming impulse? Let me explain what that means. You go into a colony and before the swarming impulse, you don't see any queen cells that are charged with eggs or larvae, and they're making queen cells. But what if you go into that colony and they've already started the process? How might that change how you make a split?
Find your queen.
Say it again.
Find your queen.
Find your queen. And then what?
Your engineers split into your new,
Why?
so they think they've already swarmed.
So sometimes it might be too hard to impede, to stop, to affect that swarming impulse, that you've just got to go with it, and you've got to work with it. I think that's a really important idea too. Do you do that whenever you see queen cells in a colony? Is that what you do? You pull the queen?
I try to.
Sometimes, yeah.
Well, I heard that last
Yeah, and
night.
they said cut the queen cells back, and then you've got to go back and cut them back another 4 days, and then you've got to go back and cut them another 4 days until they stop that swarming impulse. I don't have the time to do that for all my colonies.
Brian, don't they say it's when they cap the queen cells though? That's when it's like they're going. And if you find the capped queen cells, then you better pull your queen, do an artificial swarm.
We'll
if you
talk
will.
about that as well. I've got it all in here. Want to talk a little bit about the bee map here, because this is really important too. We've got, again, a kind of a blurry chart. You go, and this is our queen's development from egg to emergence. Day 1 to day 16. 3 days as an egg, just like any other egg. Larva, 4 to 5 days before it gets capped off, and then emerges at day 16. So if I make that 2-3 frame split with 2 broods in a food, and they don't have any queen cells at all, I need to make sure that there's some really young larvae on one of those frames so they can make their own queen. If they've already started queen cells, then I'm going to let them use theirs. However, I have found that when making a small split like this, first of all, you can't leave this many queen cells. That flow chart that Steve Rapaski put together says that when the first one of these emerges, she goes around and kills all the others. That's what the books say. That happens sometimes, not all the time. The other thing that happens is one of these virgin queens emerges and then leaves in a swarm with about half of the bees. And then another virgin emerges and leaves in a swarm with the other half of the bees, or half of what's left of the bees, right? So I've gotten to the point where I cut them down to 2 cells. I still have problems with my split swarming. I've gotten to the point where I feel like my odds are better if I cut it down to 1 cell, because this is what happens. I make a split, and if one of those virgin queens swarms out with some of the bees, then that split's really small. Still got a queen that's going out to get mated, but doesn't have the population of bees I want in there to sell a good bee, right? My other option is to cut it down to 1 cell. And they say leave 2 cells, because if 1 cell is something wrong with it, then you've got a queenless situation. I've kind of just gotten to the point where I'd like to play those odds instead of the odds with the 2 queen cells. So in this situation, when I'm making a queenless split like this, Brian, they're not going to swarm until those virgins start emerging. But that's not what you were talking about. You were talking about in a queen right situation. So when I make splits like this, I cut them back to 2, and next year I'm going to cut them back to 1. But if I really wanted to get good at it, what I would be doing is be grafting, and I'd be dropping either queen cells in there, or virgin queens, or mated queens. But that all has to do with the timing of the year and when that could happen. I can't get mated queens in mid-April. I could probably get capped cells in mid-April, but not mated queens. I want to go back and check that split too. Let's imagine I made that split on May 1st, and there were no queen cells in there at all. So it's going to go to, let me go back to this diagram, May 1st. And one of these 12-day-old larvae, 1-day-old larvae, 12-hour larvae, they're going to start making a queen cell out of, maybe a whole bunch of them. That queen is going to emerge 12 days later. I'm going to round that to 14 just to make it easy, 2 weeks, right? So if I make this split on May 1st, that queen will emerge on May 14th. She hasn't gotten mated yet, right? She's got to age a little bit. She's got to get kind of strong enough to go out and do some mating flights. She's got to go on mating flights, get mated, come back. and then start laying eggs. My preference is to not go back and check that split until 3 weeks after that queen has emerged. Now, I don't always know when the queen is going to emerge, but I can estimate and be pretty darn close. If I know it was a capped cell, when I'm estimating, I've got a 6-day window. And if I'm cutting back queen cells, I can estimate their development within that 6 days by looking at the development of the queen cells I'm cutting back. So I might kind of estimate based on a very pre-pupal one that I cut back, or I might estimate on some virgin queens that almost look fully developed as I cut them back. So I might be estimating when that queen is emerging, but I still don't go into that colony till 3 weeks after that queen has emerged. Because here's the reason. She needs about a week to go out and mate. Sometimes it takes a couple of days for her to start laying, especially if the weather's bad in the spring during mating times. That might slow down the process a little bit. Now here's one of those things that sometimes the books say, and I didn't believe it until I see it. And then I saw it, and then I believed it, and I really learned it. A lot of times, you can disturb a colony that has a newly mated queen, and the bees will reject that queen. They will perceive that disturbance as something wrong with that queen, and they will bawl and kill that queen. Raise your hand if you've seen that. Yeah, not many, but happens. Man, seeing that once is enough to kind of cure yourself of that curiosity that you have over whether that queen has been successfully mated or not. A lot of times you can go in and look and peek, and it's fine, but there's that percentage of times where they'll perceive, I don't know if it's the change in temperature, the change in light, whatever it is, but I like to wait until that queen has at least capped brood to go in and inspect that colony. So that tends to be about 31 days in total, because it's 12 days plus 3 weeks, right? 12 plus 21. It's right around 5 weeks, 31 days. So when I make splits, I'll write the date on my lid. Don't check until. Now I'll be feeding them up throughout that time, but I won't check for queen readiness until that time. That's the one I just did. Thank you. Another thing I can do, the flyback split. Instead of just taking a couple of frames of brood and food out of that colony, I can take almost everything out of that colony. So this is a not very exciting graphic of the flyback split, but notice the original site is on your right. Wish I had my pointer. Here we go. This site had a double deep 8 frame, double deep 10 frame, doesn't matter, whatever you run. One of those packed colonies. Okay? Now, I know you have all talked about vertical splits in this club, either the Snell Grove or whatever, that idea of giving a colony space by taking that pointer. Do it, man. Point to that box. Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks, man. Love it. Unless I can't use it. Oh, here we go. Okay, so this was a double deep colony. Thank you, by the way.
No problem.
Double deep colony, full of bees, full of brood, full of food. Man, looks like it's one of those candidates to swarm. So what am I going to do? I'm going to take almost everything out of it. I'm going to leave the queen. I'm going to leave 1 frame of brood and 1 frame of food. Give it a ton of foundation, and it's going to get all the returning foragers. All the returning foragers are going back to that original site, right? I can then, on this site, right next to it, put everything else. It's going to get a lot of capped brood, it's going to get a lot of open brood, it's going to get food in both boxes. What are these going to look like in about 5 days? There's going to be a ton of queen cells in here, right? I can then take these and then make a bunch of splits off of them. I can take them and then cut back all the queen cells and then add them back here. There are many things I can do from here. What I'm doing here on the original site is knocking the crap out of this colony. Any impulse that this colony had to swarm is now gone, because it's still got the queen. It lost almost all of its capped brood, and all these foragers are going to help them make that foundation. They're going to draw that comb out from those foundations. Okay, if you want to kick the snot out of a colony, this is a really good way to do it. You can make splits off of it. You can choose to make one split off of it. You can make multiple splits off of it. You can cut all the queen cells back and then recombine them and make no splits off of it if you don't want to. We have different goals as beekeepers. Increase might be one of them. Not swarming and pissing off your neighbor might be another one. And these accomplish both of those by helping you do that. Now this is what Veronica was talking about. You can make that colony feel like it's swarmed. You can pull that queen in a 5-frame nuke. That can work really well too. In fact, I've done this. This is one of my favorite things I've done this year. When that colony's going to swarm, they've got charged queen cells. You know, you pick up that top box, you look under, there's queen cells all underneath. You're like, gotta dig into this colony. I'll find the queen. I'll give her a couple of frames of brood, depending on what I want in that colony. And that colony's probably going to be a production colony for me. So it might have 3 frames of brood. It might have 4 frames of brood. Now that nuke with the queen will go to another spot in my apiary, or even in another apiary that was a dead out. That dead out colony was taped up when I found it was dead. I left all those frames in there after I cleaned them out, so it's already ready to go. I can put that colony in a double deep, and when I did this, going back to them, those colonies haven't yet shown that they've been ready to swarm. They've already got honey supers on them, and they're making honey. Back at home, I have 1 queen cell in the bottom box. All the foragers are going back to that bottom box because that's their original site. So that bottom box has a little bit more population. So I'm also going to give them a honey super because they don't have anything to do for a while they're waiting for that queen to come back and get mated. I might even get some honey made out of it. I could also choose to give them some foundation and see if they'll draw out that foundation while they're waiting. So that bottom box with the queen cell is going to get some extra space in the form of a super or even an extra deep box if I want, because they'll get more population coming back with the foragers. Then I'll have either a queen excluder, a double screen board, a Snellgrove board, something that will give me an entrance in the opposite direction with the ability of that bottom colony to use the heat to support that top colony, but the top colony has an entrance going out the other way. I've got 2 nukes going in that one spot. So let's think about what I had there. I had a colony about ready to swarm. What did I do? I pulled the queen in a nuke, put it in a totally different spot. In fact, in one yard, I put it 10 feet away. They lost all of their foragers because they're all going back here, right? And that really knocked them back. I could keep that nuke in that spot with those foragers, or I could move it 5 feet over and they wouldn't get those foragers and put the queenless in that spot. And just the part of having the foragers go back to that part will impact that decision. So those are all really, really big things I want to do. Now, if I pulled the queen over and put her here and she doesn't have any foragers, I should probably make sure that colony has food, because all of the bees that are out getting food and coming back have now been taken out of that colony. And they'll adjust. They'll get foragers in about a week again. But I might want to, if I'm moving some sort of split and making the foragers not in that colony anymore, provide some sort of nutrition for them that I might have taken away in the form of taking away their foragers. So I've got a nuke on the bottom, possibly coming back with a mated queen, a nuke on the top, possibly coming back with a mated queen, and a honey super, possibly making honey. I have a couple of different outcomes here. I could have 2 mated queens, awesome. I pull 1 nuke, I sell it, then I combine everything, back to a production colony. I could have 1 mated queen come back, that's okay. I can combine it and still back to a production colony.
My only problem is if I have 2 boxes that come back queenless. But I've got other colonies in my apiary to solve that. But it increases your odds. If you've got limited space in your apiary to put colonies, it's one footprint for making 2 different splits in one space. And then the ability to recombine them makes them so much easier. I want to talk about that idea of foragers as well. Which box do you put in that place where the foragers are going back to? There might be times where you want that colony to make queen cells. I do know people that are more skilled at making queens than me that say that if you want to make queen cells, it is better to have the foragers providing that natural nutrition, right? So having those foragers bringing in nectar and pollen while they're making those queen cells tends to make better queen cells. Again, that's not my experience. I'm not skilled enough at making queen cells to know that. However, people that I do know who are good at making queen cells do say that. The Damari method. This is our first old guy picture. We've got another one in here. The Damari method. I know Pete has talked to the club recently about vertical splits. Here in Colorado, I really want you to consider the benefit of a vertical split. We have in the spring these hugely fluctuating temperatures. And when you have a smaller colony on top of some sort of double screen board and another colony, it doesn't even necessarily have to be a much larger colony beneath it, but that heat of the bees from below is going to support that colony above. So as we have the past couple days like we just had, or you know what Colorado springs are like, it can be awesome or it can be awesome in the other direction, right? The idea of a Desmarais split is very similar to that idea of the flyback split. You've got, again, you started with a very healthy double D. You take almost all of the capped brood out of your bottom box and separate it from the queen. And you give her a frame of brood, and then she gets all the foragers, and then probably a lot of frames of foundation, because they're going to want to draw out that foundation. You put all that brood up top, you let them age out. So basically you're giving the queen space below. All of that space that was full in the form of brood, you're putting up top. You've got a queen excluder here. You've got a queen excluder here. As these bees hatch out, they work their way back down through the honey supers. The purpose of the Desmarais method is to prevent your bees from swarming, but not lose population, so you can still make a ton of honey. When I'm pulling frames of brood and putting them in a little nuke box, that is still swarm prevention, but I'm reducing the population of that original colony. The idea of these vertical splits like the Desmarais is to relieve the pressure of congestion in the brood chamber without taking away population. So as these bees hatch out above, the young bees do work their way back through the queen excluder, and work their way through the brood chamber, and they're aging of different jobs and will end up becoming foragers as well. I know this club is it's got some good experts in here on vertical splits. Yes, sir?
When you say you take the brood and put it in the top box, are you taking the nurse bees with them, or are you shaking them down and leaving them in the bottom box?
Yeah, I would take the nurse bees with them, but honestly, I'm not sure it really matters, because if you shake them off, as long as it's open brood, they're probably going to work their way back up through there and tend that open brood anyway. Now, one thing you have to do in this situation, because you've made so much space between the queen and her pheromones and a whole lot of brood, oftentimes you've got to go back and check for queen cells. This box up here might perceive itself as queenless and start making queen cells. However, that might be something you want to do. And maybe you want to make splits that way. So if that honey production wasn't as big of a goal as you wanted it to be, this could be a good way to make some vertical splits. Now, that benefit here is that benefit of that smaller colony getting the support and heat up top. Now, I have a question for this group. Because I know, in fact, I saw, Ann, you did a post recently where you used the Snellgrove method. Now, I look at the Snellgrove board and I see a whole bunch of fancy doors, and I think to myself, well, this is just a glorified double screen board. Is there a difference in purpose? Is the purpose of a Snellgrove board the same to relieve? Are you playing with the doors to pull bees back down? Is there any difference in purpose? Is it the same purpose, just different tool?
More or less, you're bleeding the foragers back into the bottom box each time.
Yeah.
So you're maintaining your honey production in that bottom box.
So you're relieving congestion in the bottom.
Right. So what I did with my Snellgrove, this is the big, I've never seen this many bees in a home. Both deeps, and frame deeps, were absolutely packed. Every single piece of bees was packed. Bees all over the top. 2 honey supers, same thing. Every single frame covered. They had already built one of the honey supers the week before. I had put a second one on 2 days before that. Wasn't enough. They were completely full. So I took as much of the fruit as I could, put it in the top box. I added a second deep on the bottom that was all drawn comb, empty drawn comb from the dead out of that. And so all that queen has is her one frame that she's on, a little bit, a couple sprigs of honey, and then everything else is open root. But those foragers to the top are going to go back down and resupply that, and she'll have plenty of room. That's the top. I'll see what happens if I make queen cells. The worse in swarm cells, and because I have damaged them, I had to scrape those all off.
So my follow-up, so it sounds like your goal is the same.
Right.
You're just using a different divider board to achieve that goal. What situations might I want to use a Snellgrove board versus the Desmarais method? Because I see the Snellgrove board as an extra step, whereas you have to open and close the doors where the queen excluder is the open door for you.
Right.
So
Right.
help me understand the difference. Yeah.
The main difference is you have control. You have control of them doors. Every 5 days, you manipulate them doors to pull them bees that's in that top brood nest into going down and joining the bottom brood nest. And you can deplete however many foragers you want. Day 5, day 10, and if you keep knocking down queen cells, you could deplete them down and then recombine them if you wanted to and keep the whole workforce. You're stopping the swarming, but you have more control. Like with a Desmarais, I did a Desmarais, works just as good, but you have more control, and you could make a nuke upstairs, make a new queen upstairs, and you can reduce that, because you want to bring all that brood upstairs to stop the swarmers.
Yeah.
But you have all that workforce upstairs, but yet you want to deplete that back downstairs to get a honey crop. And you do it at a 5-day interval with the doors. And then you can still get queen cells and get a nuke and get her mated upstairs. You can stop the door manipulation when you deplete enough bees and you want to leave enough bees to support that queen cell to get a mated nuke. That way you get a newly mated queen, and then after you get that newly mated queen and she's laying upstairs, you can go downstairs and pinch off last year's queen and recombine it all together. And then you got a monster, you got a honeycomb coming in. Yeah, that's what you do. You get the honey and a new queen out of the Snellgrove.
Thank you, Pete. Ann, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I like using the Snellgrove because, like Pete says, it gives you so much flexibility. If you want to bleed them off, if you don't want to bleed them off, you don't have to. You can just let that colony make its own, become separate up there.
Gotcha.
Or if you don't want the queen, you just want to recombine them, you can bleed them off and.
So it gives you more options with what you can do with your resources in your top box.
Right.
Thank you. Brian?
If you want to guarantee that you want to make a new queen, the Snellgrove will afford you that because it's still a double screen board.
Right.
And so they will try to.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is that if you don't have a lot of spare time on your hands, and there's a chance that you're not going to be able to get there, then you don't want that control, that 5-day control, because Desmarais is going to let you just go on autopilot.
And that was the perspective I walked into this with. I'm not getting back to that colony every 5 days. So I appreciate that, because I look at these and I see them very similar, but I look at it from the perspective of my goals. So hearing different goals helps me understand them better. Thank you, Ann.
I like the idea. I compare making the new queens using the snell grove versus trying to do grafting.
Yeah.
And I decided I liked the snell grove better because I don't have to go out and do something on a certain day other than open that little door. It can be pouring rain, and I can go out with my umbrella and my pencil and poke that little door open and shut this little door and go back and read my book. There's no opening the hive.
Yeah. Thank you.
After you get your head wrapped around them doors, that's where that PDF from Wally's shop comes in handy. After you get your head around the doors, and after you do it a couple times, you think, man, did I make this too complicated? You know, it's usually pretty easy after you do it.
I get the idea of the doors, and I get the idea of both the Desmarais and the snell grove. I was just trying to get, when I've got both tools in the toolbox, when do I pull out one and when do I pull out another? And this conversation definitely helped me clarify that.
Well, the difference is you have 75 hives, I have 7.
Yeah, and
Back there, beefy,
those
there's
goals
one
are the same. And I'll tell you, Ann, another reason I'm a little bit kind of not too fond of this is I don't want to work a colony that's going to end up 8 boxes tall. And a lot of times that's what you're going to end up with. This is almost a 2-queen colony with a whole bunch of honey supers in between. I've got a terrible back and neck. So just from a physical perspective, that doesn't appeal to me very much. But I love the theory of it all. I love learning all the different ideas. Because again, these are tools in my toolbox. And hopefully you're putting a tool or two into your toolbox today. It's not necessarily that you have to do everything the same way as me. Or just try different things. There's lots of different ways you can do things. And here's another way. If you can't find the queen, great. Can you find the queen, or are you terrible about finding the queen? I was good at it, Peter, until I started marking my queens. And then I got terrible about finding my queen, because I was doing all the things you look for in a non-marked queen. Now I'm just looking for a green dot. So I've almost detrained myself to do all the things I was doing by trying to be more efficient with my time. You can still make splits if you can't find your queen. You can do that. Here's a really easy way. You're going into a double deep colony. I'm making assumptions here. I probably should have started with, you know what, a lot of us run Langstroth style colonies, and a lot of us run double deep style colonies, but that's not true for all of us. Is there any top bar beekeepers in here? Okay. What about long lang? What about anything besides a traditional Langstroth? Veronica, what do you run?
I just started a keeper's hive this year, so it's a little bit different.
I saw that, yeah. Yeah, Ann.
I had a long Langstroth, but that's my dead out this winter, and I'm tired of dead outs. I can't keep it to go through the winter, so I'm not going to use it.
Do you feel like you have more colonies not survive in your long line than your vertical colonies?
Definitely.
And you think that, do you feel like that's an environmental issue?
I think it might be something that would work in a different climate.
Do you feel like your long line is well insulated?
I put as much insulation in it as I can. I even take old fleece sleeping blankets and like stuff them in the top.
Yeah.
And it's got foam insulation. Yeah, it's insulated.
Gotcha.
It's just they don't make it through the winter.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
The problem with the long ones, as people understand, is when they get into a cluster, they're not gonna break cluster to go get food. You have to have food up top. They'll go up and down in the frames. They will not break cluster and go side to side. You can have 100 pounds of honey in your hive and they'll die of starvation. Because once they get in that cluster, they're not breaking.
I even drilled holes in the middle of my foundation because I thought, well, then it made it easier for them to go through. No.
They're protecting that queen and they're not gonna break cluster. If they can't go up and get the emergency food above it, I even put candy on one of those all the way across. So no matter where they were at, they could get up there and they still didn't survive.
A lot of beekeepers have even seen colonies die out with food on either side of them in an 8 or 10 frame box and not be
Yeah.
able to move.
Because they're
laterally.
not the right cluster
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah, Veronica, what do you want to add?
No, I have a long line to mine into that on there too, but I lasted two winters, so.
Gotcha. Well, what I was going to say, if there are any top bar people here, or any of those other alternate type of hives, is you're probably so used to hearing the double deep Langstroth kind of conversation that you're used to making your own adaptations as you need. You can still do a split in a long line. It's just not a vertical split, it's a horizontal split, right? But it's kind of the same purpose. You could put a divider board in there and they're still sharing heat with each other. So a lot of these concepts can still apply to other types of boxes. But getting back to the double deep, if you don't know how to find your queen, you can't find your queen, you can use your queen excluder to help you do that. Go into your colony, throw your queen excluder in, put it back together and walk away. Come back 4 or 5 days later. One of those boxes is going to have eggs and really young larvae in it. One of them isn't. Right? The one with the really young eggs and larvae, that one's got your queen. You can make all your splits with everything else in the other box. That's one really easy way to know where your queen. You're finding your queen by knowing where she's not. Right? She's either in this box and this box, and you're figuring out she's in this box. Cool, I can make my split from here. That's one way you can do it. Here's my other old guy, GM Doolittle. It's actually a classic book. If you're into beekeeping history and want to learn anything about really kind of the roots of what we do today, Scientific Queen Rearing is the book for you. He talks about this way of doing splits as well as how he developed the style that we have of grafting that we use today. Removing larvae with some sort of tool and putting it into some sort of artificial cell to make queen cells. It's a classic book. Okay. Doolittle splits. I'm going to talk this through. I'm going to mime it through. Basically what you do is you find your queen by putting all the queens in a bottom box. Or sorry, all the bees in a bottom box. So I'm going to act this out. Again, I've got a double deep column. I'm going to take my top box off, full of bees, set it over here. I'm going to take an empty box. Here's one thing that even Ann, your kind of post talked about a little bit. A lot of times in the spring, when you're doing manipulations like this, extra equipment is essential. So I'm going to take my extra box, my extra deep box, that's empty, and I'm going to put it on top of my bottom box. It's an empty box that I'm using as a shaker. So either my queen is in the bottom box or in this box over here. I'm going to take every single frame from this box. I'm going to look at it. If I see the queen, I can take her and put her in the bottom box. Now I know she's in the bottom box. If I don't see the queen, shake that frame, and then I can put it back in that box. Now I'm going to take another frame. I'm going to shake that frame. Sorry, didn't look at her. Got to look and see if she's there. Now I'm not going to spend all day. I'm going to do a quick little scan, shake. And if I don't see the queen on any of these frames, I'm going to shake every single frame till all the bees are here. I've got that shaker box. There's bees all on the inside of it. I can pick up that box, shake it off, put a queen excluder on, put my original box that has frames of food, frames of brood, but no bees on it anymore, back on this column. All the bees are below, every single bee, including the queen. The nurse bees will smell the pheromones from the open brood in the top box and will really quickly populate those frames. But the queen stays in the bottom because she can't get through the queen excluder. You can start a yard at 10 in the morning and do this with 10 colonies. By the time you get done with that 10th one, you can go back to that first one, pull frames off, and the nurse bees have populated those frames. Now you've got frames of brood and food with most likely young bees on them that are going to be great for making those splits. You know the queen is below. This is how a lot of commercial beekeepers make their splits. because it can take time for even someone who's good at finding their queen to find their queen. So they don't even bother. They go through their colonies in this way, and then go back, and then pull frames off. One of the cool things is you don't have to pull those frames off that day. You can pull them off at your convenience. So if you're getting, I don't know, maybe some Randy Oliver queens in a couple of weeks, and you want to insert that into a split, you can do this on a Tuesday, expecting that queen on a Thursday, and maybe you get a call and say they're not going to be here till Friday. Those frames can sit in that top box until you're ready to pull them out and separate them. Now, sometimes they will still raise queen cells. That queen excluder, that separation, might cause that queenless box to create queen cells. So please be mindful of that. That's a sometimes thing that is based on the population of the colony, for sure, that density. Yes, ma'am?
So, my understanding, I was told early on in my beekeeping career by a member of this club who has since moved away, that you could not raise a nuke could not raise a queen by itself because there wouldn't be enough fruit in it. But you're saying you can do that.
A nuke cannot raise a queen by itself.
Okay.
No, I'm trying to clarify, I
That's what
understood.
that's what this person told me. They said you had to have a bigger, more frames than a nuke had of food, or they wouldn't be able to all by themselves raise a queen.
That has not been my
That's not true.
experience.
Okay.
I make 3-frame
That
splits.
person was wrong.
Well, it might be their experience for their, I can't speak to that. I make 3-frame splits all the time in the beginning of April, and I get awesome. Again, my biggest problem is leaving too many queen cells, and they swarm out, and then they get small. That's my biggest problem. So I'm not sure where that opinion came from.
Do you find that you get ready queens by the small amount of nurseries that you have in the box rather than having a big 10-frame box full of nurseries making queen cells?
Honestly, Pete, I don't measure them, so I couldn't say. What I can say, though, is my first, you do the math, and the books tell you do the split then, queens will start laying eggs then. My experience has been my first rounds of splits that I make, you could usually add a week to that time frame. When I go back, it's actually May 11th that I'm going back to check all of my splits this year. I'll probably have a bunch of those where I write, check in 1 week, right on the lid. Because I think because of the temperature fluctuations, it being colder, I think it could maybe delay her mating flights or delay some part of that development. So one thing that you can do when you're checking your nukes, you might see eggs, you might see open brood, you might see calf brood. Another thing you might see, though, is them preparing the brood area. You might see food around the edges, but where you expect to see eggs, you can't see eggs, but they're polishing off those cells. They know there's a queen there. She's getting ready to lay eggs. If you see that, close it up and wait 1 week and check again. However, if you go in there and that area is full of food, that means they're not preparing for a new queen at all. That's a chance that they might be queenless. So I know that doesn't really answer your question, Pete, but that is one factor I've seen, is that when it's cold in the spring, oftentimes that time frame can take a little bit longer. What if my colony has open queen cells and hasn't swarmed yet? I feel like we talked about this a little bit. That's when I'll pull the queen with a nuke, put her in another location, queen cell in the bottom box with the honey super, queen excluder, queen cell above. Again, increasing my options for what happens when they come back. We talked about this one too. They can queen in both brood boxes. What if my colony has already swarmed? Right? I know it's my colony that swarmed. My neighbors just called me. Right? It's in their tree. I know that colony has just swarmed. Right? This is what you're talking about, right? That mated colony with the mated laying queen. They've raised a bunch of queen cells. Typically, Brian,
right? This is animal husbandry, so you've got to say things like typically and usually. That colony goes into that swarm impulse. They make a bunch of swarm cells. When they start to cap off those cells is typically the time when the original queen will take off with about half of the bees. I have gone into colonies and found capped cells and queens still though. So in that case, still pulling the queen with a nuke, right? I still feel like they're way too far gone. I can cut back queen cells, but I'll likely either miss one or not get back again in time, and they're going to swarm just next week. So in that case, I will pull the queen with a nuke, put a queen cell in a frame below, put a queen cell in the frame atop, and increase my odds. However, there are other times I do want to go back and cut those queen cells. If you find emerged queen cells, I know a virgin queen has emerged from these queen cells. How can I tell from this picture? How can I tell?
Well, you look at the bottom of the queen cell, and if it's capped, she's still in there. If it's uncapped, she's gone.
The bottom. That's the key. That bottom. She has emerged from the bottom. 2 queens have emerged here. You can tell that. Look at these, though. One of them, a virgin queen, has emerged. Other ones, those queen cells got cut back. You can tell by the holes on the side. A hole. Look at that. That is not an emerged queen. This is an emerged queen. These are queen cells that are either cut back by the worker bees in that colony, well, probably by the worker bees in that colony, but either killed by this queen and then cut back by them, or even the worker bees will kill them and cut them back. Okay? Now there are times too, I've made this mistake, right? Queen's supposed to emerge on a certain day. I'll go in, I'll check the frame. Doesn't look like she's emerged yet. Put it back, I'll wait another day. Same thing, I go in. The math isn't matching what I'm seeing. What I noticed was sometimes when they cut these queen cells back, it's from the back side. So I'm looking at the front, and the queen cell looked totally fine, but there's nothing in there. They had chewed it out from the back side. I just wasn't observing carefully enough. Resources. These are great resources for thinking about doing splits and swarm prevention. Swarm Essentials by Steve Rapatsky. Increase Essentials by Larry Connor. Honeybee Democracy, talking all about the biology of swarming, the biology of the honeybee by Mark Winston. And there's 1,000 different ways you can make splits. And one of my problems with a book like this as I got started as a beekeeper was that paralysis by analysis idea. There's so many different ways to do it. How do I know which one is the best? How do I know which is the right one for this situation? Hopefully in this conversation, you've heard me think about a little bit, what of these might I choose and what are the factors that go into which one of these choosing. But I guarantee this, choosing none of them is the wrong decision. Choose one, and it might not be the best, but reflect on it and think about what you would do differently or better, or sometimes they're just things that are beyond your control, like not knowing the weather was going to do something in some way and wishing you had done something different for some other reason. Give it a shot, right? Make splits, make more bees. Your bees are not going to last forever, right? You have to expect that your queen, your favorite queen that you have named, is not going to last forever. She's not going to be the best queen forever, so you might as well think about replacing her now while she's still your favorite queen, instead of worrying about that as you see her starting to fail or you accidentally squished her. Make splits, people. You can make bees. Use this time of the year. Bees want to make bees at this time of the year. Use the seasons to help you with your goals by aligning them with what bees want to do. All right, that's my spiel. Yeah, yeah.
Talking about time frames,
Yeah.
and, you know, a lot of this stuff is great in other states, but in Colorado, we realize that we only have May, June, and July. Because in August, we're getting ready for winter. And if you're not thinking of winter in August.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Huh?
When you say you only have May, June, and July, for what?
Huh?
For what?
For your queen rearing.
Okay.
Because you've got, if you're going into August with a newly mated queen, she's not gonna be ready for winter. So you really wanna back up a little bit, and make sure that your queen has mated plenty early enough to get ready, because your August brood is your September and October brood is your winter bees. I mean, in Colorado, we have a short season.
Okay.
And so, if you keep your population up while you're making your queen, that's great. But you start doing splits, she may not be, if you're doing it too late, you're not gonna be ready for winter.
Yeah, I think with skill will help you get those smaller colonies and later queens through winter better. Your odds are obviously lower, but I put a lot of 8-frame colonies into winter. I put 7-frame colonies into winter.
Yeah, but I put nukes to it too.
Yeah.
That doesn't help the average beekeeper in the backyard. So they think, oh, I'm gonna make the queen and it's July. Well, I think you're a little late because you're losing 30 days production to start with. And then by the time she comes back and gets mated, you're losing some production to be ready for winter.
It gets harder the later you go in the season. And where you are in Colorado can depend on how hard that is. You know, I look at where I am in Colorado and I feel like I have a pretty temperate season. And then I think about people up in Conifer and I look at how much shorter their season is than mine. I'm not sure how much shorter yours is here than mine. I get a sense it's a little bit shorter and a little bit different, but not much. I mean, you're right, the later you go, the more you push it, and the more you're pushing those odds. This is all about percentages, right? You can do it at this time of the year, and you might get a good percentages of queens coming back in your splits, and try it again in August and get a totally different percentage, and try it again next year, and have those percentages change completely based on the nutrition that's out there, based on the weather of that year. So you're right, it's harder with the shorter season, it's harder later in the season, but we can still do this if we play on the motivations of the bees and work with them when they want to do it. I think those are the times to maximize your percentage.
So the system, if you can keep your queen laying, the longer you can keep her in that hive while you're making another queen, the more successful you're going to be.
It depends on what your goals are and what success is for you.
That's the beauty of the snow ghost, that you can make a queen upstairs while you're looking on the downstairs.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else?
Where do you live at?
I live in Lakewood, ma'am. Most of my colonies are on the west side of the metro area, but I have an Aurora yard as well. Yeah. All right, thank you, everyone. Thanks, man, appreciate it.
Thanks, Brian. All right. Okay, let's all take a quick break and we'll come back and think about
Can I see something first?
Absolutely.
So Vance brought us some catmint plants, which bees love. So if you'd like some of that, it's out here on the table, as well as a bucket full of nails.
2-inch galvanized nails. I use them to build boxes with and make as many as you want. Courtesy of my son, who bought the bucket for $2 at a yard sale.
There are some Ziploc baggies there for you to use for
If you
either the
take the
plants.
catmint, get some wet paper towel and wrap the roots in the wet paper towel. But take as many as you want.
So let's take a 5-minute break and come back here about 7:55.